everybody. This is Dr. Flight. It's so good to be touching base with you. Excited about this topic. This is business to business marketing, B2B marketing. And this video talks about the 6 different steps involved with the decision-making process for business. So this is going to be markedly different in a couple ways than the decision-making process for an individual consumer. Again, remember that a great percentage of economic activity happens between businesses. We spend a lot of emphasis and time talking about how to do marketing with between a business and a customer or the end user. But in reality, when you talk about dollars spent, much of the economy, a vast majority of the economy, is driven by business to business exchanges or transactions. So thinking about buying or selling in a B2B environment is very, it's important. It's an important part of what we do kind of in what happens in the economy. So in this video, there are 6 steps to the buying process for a business, and we're going to just briefly talk about each one, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so you kind of have an image here, and you can, it's a good idea for you to memorize these steps. So just, in an order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what are the steps of the buying process? Starts with need recognition. Product specification is next, where we identify exactly what we want the purchase to accomplish. We do what's called an RFP, so that's a request for proposal, and that's the buyer. The buyer makes a request, posts that request, and then potential sellers respond to that request. So it's kind of like a bid almost. So then once the request for proposals is out, then the proposals come back from the vendors. The vendors provide those completed ones, and make an offer basically, and the proposal's analyzed. Then you do negotiations and make a selection of the vendor that you're going to use to make the purchase. Once that's finalized, you identify who you're going to buy from, then you specify your order. It's kind of like an order form where you specify delivery dates and quantities and things like that, the schedule of the deliveries, payment methods, that type of stuff. And then once you receive the product, use the product, you evaluate that product and that vendor, so that future times you buy, you'll be able to buy quickly and stuff. So that's kind of it. So, again, we're not going to spend enormous amounts of time kind of on all of these, but interestingly, like many topics in marketing, this is one where you could actually take an entire semester-long course in B2B business or B2B marketing. So what we do, again, is just kind of a very surface look at the process here. So number 1, need recognition. Okay, so kind of like a consumer, you recognize that you are missing a piece of equipment, or maybe some technology emerges. You realize that you could integrate into your processes, and that new technology can help you maybe in operations or accomplish something that you're doing. So at any rate, there's this sort of epiphany or knowledge that comes to be where you need something, or maybe quite frankly, an old piece of equipment doesn't work anymore and it has to be replaced. So at any rate, you have a business process that's not functioning well and needs to be updated. If you're a reseller, it might be that you recognize a market need, and so you go out and look and you buy a supply, which you then resell to the market. But that need is something that you recognize is there in the marketplace, and then it's a need that can be filled. So you might be a wholesaler or a retailer, for instance, in that case, where if you're a retailer, you have customers coming in who request certain products, and you that's the need that you have because you want to fill your shelf with products your customers want. And so that provides the motive for you to enter this buying process. So step number two, then, purchase specification. So after recognizing the need, then, what we want to do is we want to think very carefully about exactly what you want the buy to do. What will the buy do for you, and what are the parameters that will achieve your goal? So this is a little bit more specific. If you have a piece of equipment that broke, you need that piece of equipment to do a job for you, and that job has certain specifications. So therefore, the new piece of equipment has specifications that must be met in order to accomplish the job. So the idea here is that whatever the need is, you need to identify how that need can be satisfied and what specifications are required in order to do it. So this is helpful. This actually goes into the RFP, which will be developed, but knowing these specifications helps either identify potential vendors or suppliers, but it also helps vendors and suppliers fine tune their product to meet your needs. Okay, so number three, cruising right along, the request for proposal, so RFP. So this RFP, it's a written document. It specifies sort of what your needs are, what your time frame is, kind of what you want the piece of equipment to do, maybe, those types of things. This can be posted publicly, or it can be sent out to a select set of vendors, qualified vendors. But this goes out. It's like a document. It's like it's a reverse. If you think about it, it's sort of like in reverse. Usually, if you have a product, you advertise it. Well, in this case, you have a need and you're advertising your need, and vendors come to you with their need, well, with their solution to your need. So so that's it. So the RFP then kind of is the framework of basically what you're looking at, and vendors can see it. Again, sometimes it's public, sometimes it's not. Number four is when the vendors return to you, it's not so much an offer, but it is. It's like, this is our product, this is how it meets your specifications, this is the cost range, these are the performance expectations. This is how this product, we'll talk about how this product will meet your specifications that you posted in the RFP. So it's basically a proposal. That's what gets sent back from the vendor, and the buyer reviews that. So let's say we put out an RFP and we have 4 or 5 proposals that are returned to us. Our job now is to evaluate each of those proposals and begin to discern which is the best for us. And we might narrow that down to 2. We might do another round of interviews and kind of evaluations. And then we move forward and we agree and talk to a vendor. We negotiate some of the details, in terms of maybe the price, the specifications of the product. We might negotiate warranties or supply things, or repair contracts is sometimes negotiated as well at this time for future repairs in between purchases. But at the end of the day, we make these negotiations and we select a vendor. So again, we receive the proposal, analyze the proposal, negotiate, and then we decide which vendor we're going to go with. Okay. So after the RFP, we evaluate, we look, and we decide. So number five, we place our order. Now, once we place our order, there are certain specifications that have to be made. And the exact details of things like delivery, the terms, the price might be worked out, but we might have to arrange like what are the specific forms of payment, what are the specific payment dates that will be made. What happens if, for instance, what happens in the contract? We'll go back to the contract, but what happens if the vendor is late sending the equipment or sending the supply or sending whatever we bought? What happens if it's damaged? Who pays for that? Who pays for shipping? Is it FOB, free on board, or free on arrival? So who pays for shipping? Does the vendor pay for shipping or do we pay for shipping? There are lots of little details like that need to be worked out. We've agreed that we're going to do business together, and we've agreed on the product and the price and those things. But it's the little details that kind of need to be specified in the order. So an order is like I'm placing an order for the product, and we've agreed that we're going to do business, but this is the order. So that's kind of that last step. The key decision maker, the person who makes the decision, like say I'm a key decision maker, we decide to go with this vendor. That person's probably not the person who's specifying the order. Could be somebody very different. It could be somebody very different in the firm who does that. So you have all these different people involved, and somebody is going to be involved with shipping and receiving, and somebody's going to be involved with actually writing the check to pay for the product, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those specifications need to be sort of ironed out in step 5. Then, as you're receiving the product, you're using the equipment, you have an opportunity to assess the performance of the vendor. Now, ideally, this is a business transaction, so you want to really understand if this vendor is a good vendor to work with, because we're going to work with them in the future, or we could possibly do more business with them. And so imagine this process lasting a couple months. Imagine if we didn't have any performance evaluation and we had to go through this process again and again and again. If we do have performance evaluations and assessments, then we could say, hey, look, this vendor is approved. We've used them before. Here's their performance. Let's use them again, and we don't have to go through all the hassle of an RFP and all of that stuff. We still have to negotiate, we still have to assess, or we still have to do a specific order and order specifications, step 5, but we don't have to do those earlier steps maybe if we know this vendor is a good vendor. So as a business decision, we're going to evaluate the vendor and we're going to score them. And if they score well, then we'll continue to use them. If they don't score well, next time we need to buy, we're going to look at other vendors and see if we can't find a better vendor who can perform better for us. So again, this is a little bit more strategic and a lot more deliberative than a consumer would have. So businesses tend to be a little bit more focused on costs and making sure their costs, are met by the performance of the vendor. So here's an example. This is, again, it's kind of like the compensatory decision model you might have learned in consumer behavior. But this is business behavior where we're evaluating vendors' performances on a set of criteria. So the criteria here are customer service, issue resolution, delivery, quality, and that's those 4 things, right? So delivery and quality. Now we score them, and in this case, customer service scored a 5, issue resolution scored a 4, delivery was a 5, and then quality though was less. It was kind of in the middle of the road. It was a 3. So we have pretty good scores, and what you could do is just kind of take the average of that. What this model does, just so that you know, this is called a weighted um, criteria type of a scoring model, and the weight is the column where you see number two. It says importance score, importance score. So this is like a weight where not each of these four, so each of these four things, if we didn't use that and we took an average, each of these four elements would be equally weighted at 25%. But what we're saying here is that customer service is more important than the other criteria to this company. So it's weighted more at zero point 0.4 or 40% of the total score's weight is based on customer service. Delivery is less important than anything else. So delivery, being delivered on time, if it's a little late, a little early, we can deal with that. It's not that important. So it's weighted less. Only 10% of the total weight is assigned to delivery in terms of this scoring model. And again, this is kind of like a decision-making model. These types of weighted models are really popular, actually. So if you haven't seen one before, this is a good example of one. You might see these in other business applications. So again, just kind of think this, let's walk through this chart, pause it, walk through this chart, and make sure you understand kind of, you got three things. You got the criteria, you've got the performance measure, like what they scored, the score, performance score for each of the criteria. And then you have a weight that is multiplied by the score in order to balance out by importance, each of these criteria. That is then summed up. In this case, you've got a 4.2, presumably on like a 5-point scale, probably. It looks like it's a 5-point scale here. So 4.2 is the score that's here. And it's good that they scored well on customer service. They scored a 5 on customer service because that's the most important thing, followed by quality. Now, if their quality score got up, they'd obviously do a lot better. So, okay, this has been just a run through of the 6 steps that businesses go through when they buy a product. This is a decision-making process or set of steps that businesses take as they look to buy products. So identify, know, and understand each of these 6 steps. Okay, so you should just memorize the steps and be able to talk a little bit about each one of the steps. So if you're asked a question about the steps, you should know what they are. If you're asked, hey, tell me a little bit, what is an RFP? You should be able to write a sentence or 2 or 3 describing what an RFP is. So again, go back in your notes, read this, and understand those things. The second part, and these are the only 2 things here, is be familiar with one of these weighted decision models that we just saw for vendor performance. A weighted model, again, it's kind of a common technique in decision making where you have criteria, you score the performance on those criteria, but those criteria aren't all equally weighted. Some are weighted more than others, and so we have to apply that weight in order to get a proper overall or global score of that performance, and that's what that does. Okay, so I know that's a little bit much, so that's why I say take your time, read the text, look at these examples, and just be familiar with kind of the concept there, and you may even want to draw out one or write out one on your own. So, all right, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, have a great day.